So before I go any further, I just want to talk a little bit about mark making and different ways of shading things. So let's start with just a circle. So I mentioned in a previous video about cross hatching, and cross hatching is basically they're hatch marks, and if I go across them like that, you are cross hatching. Now you can cross hatch like this, you can cross hatch like that, where they're literally making squares, these are making diamonds. So you can experiment with different ways of cross hatching. You might notice I'm holding my pencil quite far down. It's allowing me to make these short, decisive little marks, and I can actually, if I'm not demonstrating, you know, it can go pretty fast. The thing about cross hatching is you can firstly take the pressure off the pencil as you go along, kind of lighten them. You can also vary the thickness between the lines, or rather the gap between the lines. So that's darker, that's lighter, and I can then also just cross hatch just only over some of this so that it even gets darker towards this end. And if I want it even darker, I can draw further lines in between the lines I've just drawn and go over it again right in at the very edge, so that you have this gradation from dark to light, all by using lines. Now for something like this circle, if it's say a coin, right, a more or less flat disc, and you just want to indicate there's the sun and it's shining down around there, you can just use this kind of straight line cross hatching technique. Or rather, what I'm trying to say is, rather than you have to use this, it might be more appropriate to use these straight lines on something flat like a disc than it would be on something curved like a sphere or an apple, something like that. So let's say if I move on and draw apple, what I would do is, again, there's our sun and it's shining down, and it's putting a highlight there, maybe a shadow here. What I would tend to do is try and kind of indicate the curve of the apple by curving the cross hatch marks. I'm not making the best job of this. And then curve again the opposite direction as you go around. You can see examples of this on old etchings, and it's really quite effective. And in fact, they tend to mix, you know, dots in with this at times, so that the cross hatch, then they become little lines. So let me take that line there, and then it breaks up into little lines, and then dots as it's getting towards the lightest part. You've got these lines which turn into little dots, and it's very, very effective at it's also kind of a little bit similar to what you see on banknotes, if you look at how the images are formed in banknotes out of these kind of curved swirling lines. So again, with this, at the darkest part, I can cross hatch in between the lines I've already drawn, but not going quite as far as I had done originally, and then back the other direction get the shadows, and I can keep doing that, smaller and smaller little crosshatch marks, until we've got a nice gradation of tone. Another way is to, which would be more for sketching really, when you're out and about and you want to draw something really quickly and you think, oh gosh, I really want to draw this sphere that I've just seen. There's the sun, and the sun is hitting it, shadows here, and you literally just do the quickest, scribbliest sketch where you kind of think, right, scribble, 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 and I'm not pressing it with my pencils quite as hard, and I'm scribbling back the other way because this is the darkest part, and I get kind of an approximation of where the light and shadow were, and that it's a circle, but really, as I said, only for sketching, not for necessarily, I suppose it could work for a finished drawing if you wanted quite a vibrant, lively kind of a drawing of, I don't know, people dancing or something like that. It'd probably be better to have loads of scribble marks than quite a static type of shading technique like this cross-hatching one. My preferred technique for drawings that I do is basically how I am shading this in now, which is to just gently move the pencil back and forth across the page, and I'm pressing a little bit harder as I get to the edge here. And likewise, you can see a little bit like the cross hatching, I'm trying to follow the direction of the shape that I'm doing. Otherwise, if I didn't, and if I take this side for not doing that, I'm going to shadow like that, and then I'm going to shadow like that, and I'm going to shadow like that. You get these funny join mark lines, which can look okay at times, but if you've got a really vast expansive space like a sky or something, it's kind of a little bit distracting looking, seeing these lines. Now, one way to get rid of them is to start another like that in the middle of each of them until they all kind of merge into one. But if you're going to do that, you want to be very careful that you're still getting the right tonal range, because every time you go over them, you're making them darker. So if you're going to do that, just make sure that your first initial marks are as light as possible so that you don't darken them down too much. But anyway, back to this side. So I'm following the shape and I'm darkening it a lot where it's in shadow, and then just getting lighter and lighter and lighter as I move across. And this is perfect for something, you know, quite smooth like human skin, well, young human skin anyway. You know, anything like the sides of buildings, stuff like that, anything quite smooth and without too much texture on it. The other way is to literally go dotty. So if our light source again is hitting around here, is to have as little dots as possible there, and then have more and more and more of them getting darker and darker, which I'm not going to do because this is going to take forever. I'll just do a little section here. So I get darker and darker and darker, and as I get towards the edge, obviously you've got, well, I'm going to just cheat and draw these quite big, but a greater incidence of dots all together until they kind of form a black mark. And that worked quite well in black pen drawings, where you'll see people literally sitting there for hours, and the more dots together the darker, and the less dots obviously the lighter. Not mad keen on this technique, but I mean, I can already see that almost looks like it could be like a granite stone circle, so it's perfect for different textures. So I guess the point in showing you all of this is to just start thinking about the kind of marks that you might make in order to indicate the texture of what it is you're drawing, not just the fact that yes, it's lighter here and it's darker here, because these all show that, but also what is the object made of? Is it plaster? Is it water? Is it, what is it? And so let's turn our circle into a kind of a little cartoony little face, right? There's a little cartoony face. Now, I can, if I want to, just use a mix of techniques. So here I'm going to just use the dot technique around his eyes to indicate that they're kind of quite deep set. Right. But maybe I want to use a different technique, maybe my shading technique here, my shading technique that no one else uses, around the mouth here to indicate again that he's kind of curving in there a little bit. And maybe this guy has hair. So I'm going to follow the line of his hair like this. And rather than cross hatching across, I'm going to just use the same lines and think, well, that's dark, that's lighter, maybe it's a bit shadowed here, so that you get that kind of hair effect of light hitting some of the hair and then it's dark in others. And then maybe this guy has terrible acne, so to indicate that, I'm going to make, you know, funny other little pencil shapes on his face. And this part is lovely and smooth. So that's it really, is what I wanted to say. Well, let's cross hatch this side of his face. Is to think about using one or a combination of these techniques or any other marks you want to make in order to try and give your drawings a little bit more visual interest, depending on what it is. If it's people dancing, maybe you want more lively marks to kind of indicate the movement. That's a couple dancing, you know, rather than that would be just so static. You would have to draw in every detail and by the time you've done that, they've moved on and they're not dancing any longer. So vary your marks, vary the pencil that you use, experiment with where you hold the pencil down here, maybe up here gives you much more of a mark like that. And make sure if you're cross hatching or indeed using any other techniques is to try and follow the shape of the object that you're drawing, particularly spheres. Flat side of buildings is not going to matter so much if I have shadows coming down like that. However, if you've then got curvy marks coming down the side of the building, it doesn't really make as much sense as it would on a sphere. So that's it for now. Happy drawing, and the next time I'm going to actually use some of these techniques to draw something recognizable. Thanks, and until the next time.